therapeutic feeding center just outside of Maradi in Niger has been ground zero for the country's hunger crisis. It is an intensive care unit for the weakest of the weak, children who are literally starving to death. These images captured the fleeting attention of the international community, a spotlight that has now disappeared, leaving a country in crisis.
What we're seeing is that the situation is not getting any better. We're seeing the same number of people entering our supplemental feeding centers each week, and we're about to open several therapeutic feeding centers to deal with the more severely malnourished, because there is still a crisis of severe proportions here in Niger.
International aid organizations have been asking for help since last year, but despite a forecast of a famine, their calls were ignored.
We knew this was going to happen. I mean, it's like we knew because we had indicators saying this year is going to be terrible because the rain are not coming. So it's not like an overnight disaster where you are caught by surprise.
Nutritionists say the problem was compounded because children in Niger suffer from chronic malnutrition. Their weakened immune systems are vulnerable, and frequently it's after a life-threatening infection that they're brought to feeding centers such as this one in Jean-Tadou. Trained volunteers move through this line of women and children detecting the most severely malnourished because for the worst cases, the 4-hour wait may be too long.
This child here has dehydration. I'm well hydrated. If I pinch my skin, it goes back straight away. Whereas in this child, as you can see, it's taking a while for it to go back to normal. This child is very apathetic, is not responding, is not playful. That's both a sign of dehydration and malnutrition.
Connecting with the villagers gives aid workers a perspective the government often lacks. Yet one of the biggest challenges faced by aid organizations comes from the government of Niger itself.
I think hunger is a very political issue, and Niger is a country which needs to improve its overall image outside at the international level. And remember that Niger is trying to develop tourism.
Musa Changari, an outspoken critic of the government and political activist, says tourism isn't the only reason the government denies there's a famine.
Of course, it's not surprising that this government says that there is no famine in Niger, because this situation is also the result of the government's own policies.
This is the central market in Niamey, Niger's capital city. As you can see, there's no shortage of food here. In fact, the country isn't suffering from a food shortage, but rather the people's access to it. Changari blames the government for insisting that farmers plant crops for export, driving food prices even higher. Currently, more than half the population can't afford a bag of rice, surviving on just $1 a day. Many NGOs have vowed to stay beyond the emergency. Right now they're focused on damage control, but in the coming weeks and months, their main priority will be damage prevention.
Yes, there's a crisis right now, but if we don't start implementing long-term programs to really start looking at the root cause of this, then it's just going to be a repetitive cycle.
As dawn breaks, the youngest breadwinners are already fishing in the Niger River. Mali is on the verge of the same crisis as its neighbor Niger, facing a fierce fight against hunger. Our first visit to the Gao Hospital reveals mothers and grandmothers waiting in the corridors with their malnourished children. This 3-year-old girl, we're told later, doesn't live through the night.
Children are the most vulnerable group, so we are only working with children from 0 to 5 or 6 years because they are the most vulnerable.
The next day, we return to see how this hospital is partnering with Action Against Hunger to change the fate of these hungry children. The children are weighed and measured so nutritionists can see the extent of the problem. It's often severe. This 3-year-old weighs just 6.5 kilograms.
First you have to start to bring the body again in circulation somehow. And after 3 days, then you can give them the real high energy milk. So it's called F75 because you have 75 calories per 100 milliliter.
The high caloric formulas breathe life back into these fragile bodies. The results are promising for most of these tiny patients. But often, just getting here is an insurmountable hurdle. This village is a 45-minute drive to Gao, where the nearest hospital is. But mothers in this village must make that trek by foot in the blazing heat to save their children. This mother succeeded and shows off her relatively plump baby. Inside her mud hut, she reveals the secret of her success, a bag of Plumpy Nut, the take-home nutritional remedy. Remote villages in Niger and Mali depend on subsistence agriculture. When the rains don't come or locusts attack the crop, as they did this past year, villages are left with what is called a hunger gap.
They only have one harvest a year, and when they are approaching, they're finishing their stocks, they enter a hunger gap.
The hunger gap is slowly widening as resources dwindle and overpasteurization claims the precious fertile land left in the country.
We only really see the international attention paid to these crises when people start dying, and this is ridiculous. If organizations like Action Against Hunger are empowered to really work with the local populations, we can make huge impacts.
Huge impacts have been seen through training programs about food security, such as herd management, crop selection, and crop rotation. Helping women form cooperatives where they can pool their resources to save food and money is yet another cost-effective technique the NGO is teaching to ward off the crisis. Simple measures that international aid groups hope can solve West Africa's complex hunger problem. Kiran Kali for CNN, Gao, Mali.